You must be careful about the words you use, or the words you allow to be used in your house. Words are things. You must be careful. Careful about calling people out of their names, using racial pejoratives and sexual pejoratives and all that ignorance. Don't do that.
It's time to talk about it.
Pull up a chair and take a seat.
We're serving up recipes for life.
With Hampton University's Dr. Richard Mason and Dr. Tamara Williams.
Welcome to the Sunday Brunch.
This is Dr. Tamara Williams.
And this is Dr. Richard Mason. And welcome to another edition of Sunday Brunch with the Good Doctors.
It's good to see you, bro, as always.
Likewise. You know, they say it's good to be seen and not viewed.
Amen to that. Not trying to be viewed anytime soon.
Exactly. So how have you been?
Oh, I was getting ready to ask you that. It's been very busy. You know, such is our life, right? Such is the story of our lives. We're always ripping and running and going.
Exactly.
But it's always good to take a pause for the cause and get together to have these conversations that are really necessary for our people out there.
Exactly. And that's the thing. We always tell people, take a break. You know, try to take a break and have these conversations and share some things that are going on with your life. Because guess what? Things that you're thinking about and thinking that you're going through and everything or whatever, other people are thinking about those things too. So that's what makes these conversations so great, sitting here at the table with you each and every week.
I'm telling you, the food is good too, so that doesn't hurt.
Not at all.
Not at all. But the conversation is always even better.
Exactly. You know, I have fat boy issues and all. And I have to jump right on in and fix my plate.
You got to wait till we introduce the guest before you get your plate. You got to hold on. What I'm excited about today's conversation is we have another doctor in the house. We have a DNP, a doctor of nurse practitioner extraordinaire. But what I love about the conversation we're going to have, of course, we'll ask her how she got into nursing and wanting to save lives and all that kind of stuff. But she really specializes in working with the elderly. And we know that a lot of us are not getting younger. We are definitely getting older. So there's conversations that people need to have at the table. And a lot of times we're running from these conversations, or we're trying to avoid these conversations, or we're trying to put GoFundMes together at the last minute because of these type of situations.
Exactly.
We can do better when we plan.
Exactly. And we need people who are going to look out for us. You know what I mean? Because I tell you, to be honest, I look at some of these kids, and these aren't the kids that Whitney sang about. And I'm worried about what it's going to look like for me with Social Security and, you know, who's going to take care of us, you know?
All of those things. My daughter has already told me she has no intentions of being my ultimate caregiver. So I'm
Shady Pines.
You understand?
Shady Pines.
I don't want to live in Shady Pines, but I'm going to need some alternative real estate. You know, they do have some nice housing areas. So we'll get to have a conversation today about something that is really the inevitable, and people need to not run from it, but to really understand that what you're running from is what you're running to anyway.
Exactly. Because if you live long enough, they say you'll get there.
Understand?
Exactly. Well, I'm going to go fix my plate.
Now you can go get
That's
your
what
plate.
I'm going to fix my plate.
Bring me a biscuit back.
You know I got you covered.
Thank you
got
so
you covered
much.
with your biscuit.
Ooh, I need my bread in my life. So I want to introduce Dr. Terry Guyton-Smith. She is an HU alum as well. And so we definitely want to welcome you to Sunday Brunch. We want to thank you for coming in to talk to us. And as we have the conversation, everyone will get to know a little bit more about you. So welcome to Sunday Brunch.
Yes,
Thank you guys
welcome.
so very much for having me. I'm honored. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. As we say, welcome home.
Yes, well, always in the HU house.
Yes, welcome home.
Always
welcome home.
welcome. Yes.
Definitely. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do and all.
Oh, wow. So I am a family nurse practitioner. So that is an advanced practice nurse who goes on to get advanced training for diagnosing and treating conditions and diseases. And then once you do all of that fun stuff, depending on what your specialization or what you choose to be your specialization. You can choose either women's health, you can choose pediatrics, but for me, I chose family. So I can take care of any patient from birth to death. But my specialty is geriatrics. So I love the elderly. I love the older individuals. I've worked in a myriad of career fields or areas. I've done everything from labor and delivery to women's health, nephrology, which is kidney disease. I've done urology. I've done autoimmune disorders and all of that other stuff. One of the main things, though, is I'm a retired Air Force veteran, so I was on active duty for 21 and a half years.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And so that really sort of catapulted my experience in nursing. I started off as a medical technician, so you're sort of a jack of all trades. You do everything. You do draw blood, you get vital signs, you admit patients, you do a little bit of everything. It's a good experience, though, because it teaches you time management, which is so important when it comes to taking care of patients. So especially
when you have a lot of them.
Yes. Right. And, it was really, going in the Air Force was not my first choice. I actually had a basketball scholarship. Because I was pretty darn good back in the day.
All right.
I was.
You got some hands and some skills.
She can cross up a few people.
And softball, I'm very good athlete. Down south, one of the things that we used to do, spend a lot of time outside, right? So sports was the thing, basketball and softball, and not a lot of females played. So there were opportunities for African American women, right? If you wanted to get a scholarship, and there's 11 of us.
Okay.
So need I say more about paying for college?
Right.
She had a whole football team and an extra.
So that was my opportunity. Broke my ankle my first year, right? So I and then I partied a little bit too, but
okay.
I had to get that in, and then had to make some decisions. And I said, okay, do I want to go home? No, I don't want to go home. So I had to make a decision, and the Air Force recruiter had the blue color that I love. So hey, that's where I went. Okay, and took the test the same day, didn't study or anything, had no idea. But always knew nursing was my thing. This all started, I don't know if you guys remember what a candy striper was.
Yes.
So back in the day,
I've heard of them.
15. I worked as a candy striper in one of the hospitals, which is, you kind of take patients they're getting discharged from the hospital, you take them in the wheelchair, you think you're doing a little something, right? So you take them to the car and help them get in the car, or if they're going to x-ray or whatever. So that was the job. And we only had in our hospital, or the biggest hospital we had near us, maybe 1 or 2 African American women there. I mean, but my mom was a nurse. So that was my job. To earn a little bit of money so that I could do the things that I wanted to do. You want basketball sneakers, you got to pay extra money, right?
Yes.
And when you have 10 other people who need something,
right. So it was, but that really started. I mean, I always knew I wanted to be a nurse because I've always been the caregiver. I'm 7 of 11.
Okay. Okay.
So,
every Sunday is a Sunday brunch.
Right.
Literally. And then growing up down south, there were a lot of things, cultural things, you go to church. My mom was also a minister, so we're in church on Sunday. And, just taking care of family and our elderly was extremely important. I mean, they were sort of, that's what you look forward to, getting that pound cake that, only grandma could cook, right? The churning of the ice cream on the porch, just some of the things that now I think, oh my gosh, I really should be dead from all of the stuff I used to eat back in the day.
Arteries just clogged.
Yes, as a nurse.
You had to go into nursing to save your own life.
But all of those things, but those individuals who impacted our lives, because we got to hear the stories, we got to hear about our history, we got to hear about cultural things. And growing up in South Carolina, it was a bit different back then. There wasn't a whole lot of integration. And so for us, when that started, it was really, really good to get a good handle on our history, because then you can make change. Then you can move forward. Then you can have an opportunity to make a difference in your community. And so I think that's where my initial interest in nursing started. and loving the elderly. Oh my gosh, my uncles and stuff, and you diagnosing everybody. Everybody
So
got
if you are one of 11.
11.
How many siblings did your parents have then? Because you're saying your uncles, so I'm assuming you grew up with a large family on both sides too.
So my mom, there were 9 of them.
Okay.
And my dad, there were 14. There was some twins mixed about in there.
Clearly.
Okay.
And back then everybody was your cousin. So
I got lots of cousins.
you don't know if they were
cousins.
real cousins or if they were just so
They
close
did
to
not
the
play
family.
with you guys, because that's
Right.
a lot.
It's a lot. But that family unit and the way that the elders ran that unit was so very important. How well they were taken care of, how well they were respected, and those types of things. Even once their physical health started to,
Deteriorate,
decline, and even their mental health, they still were we still had a responsibility to them because of everything that they had done for us and the opportunities that they created for us. So that was just a great experience for me. Now, it wasn't easy, I'll tell you that, but it definitely made a difference. And then the Air Force was like an eye-opening experience for me. Went to Texas, my first, Texas, yeah. I'm thinking, oh my goodness.
Okay.
Very in this part of Texas, Wichita Falls, not a whole lot of African Americans in that community. So it was really a challenge. You go through basic training and you finish and you're so proud of yourself. And the only thing I'm thinking about is, we're in Texas. That's more than 2 flights. That was my first time flying too. I had to get on a little propeller plane to go. I flew into DFW and then had to fly a little thingy with like people walking out on the launch pad and getting into something. I'm thinking, there is no way I can do that. That's when I knew that there was a God, right? There were like 13 of us on this flight. So we get in and we fly to this little area. And it ended up being one of the best experiences of my life because it really kind of solidified the fact that, yes, I want to be a nurse. I want to be able to take care of patients and give them the best care possible and take care of our patients, because culturally there are differences when you talk about taking care of patients, but you still have to keep in mind the bottom line with them. And geriatrics is one of those specialties of medicine. It's an arm of medicine that really focuses on conditions that are specific to older people. And, when you think about physical deterioration and mental deterioration, those things can be so catastrophic for not just the individual, but for their families.
Right.
Somebody who has been, the pillar of that, or, the center of
The
that
organizer
family.
of that family.
And then to see them, deteriorate, it's really, really difficult. So there's a lot of conversations that have to happen. There's a lot of education that has to be done. There's a lot of collaboration that has to be done. This reminds me of an old adage I used to hear. It takes one mom can take care of 7 children, but 7 children can't take care of one mom, right? And that reminds me of how...
That's really sad.
Yeah. It just reminds me of, some of the things that we see, and I've seen over my, years of experience in the emergency room and such, where, families bring their loved ones in because they're not quite sure what to do. Their condition has deteriorated to the point where they can't manage them at home. And treat everything that they have done so far. It has to come to, it's like you have to have a stroke before you get your blood pressure treated. It's like reverse psychology kind of thing. If you know you have high blood pressure, don't you take your medicine the whole time so you don't have a stroke? It's like we wait till the bad thing happens and then we try to prepare. Well, it's too late to prepare then.
Right.
Then those conversations are more difficult to have. Conversations like, what would this person have wanted for their end-of-life care? Who would they want to make their decisions?
Right.
Who would they want to be their advocate? You know, what do they want their end of life to look like? What are some things that we have to be looking at?
Do they want to be resuscitated?
Yeah.
All of that, yeah.
There's a lot of ethical dilemmas that we face when it comes to that, because it can sometimes be financial. And that really creates a dilemma, because it's not about the individual then. It's really about their means. And so sometimes they don't have an opportunity to get input. You know, I remember when we had to make a decision, you know, with my own mom going into hospice care. You know, all 11 of us, first of all, getting us all to sit down at one table was like pulling teeth.
Right.
And then we had to
Anybody who
have
has siblings, they know.
you had to have
That
the
many.
disciplinarian, right?
Yeah.
And then you had to have the
You had
pull
your
it back in
sergeant of
line
arms.
one.
Yes.
Right.
And so, but we all had to sit down. You know, we were so fortunate because the only question I ask is, my mom had her faculties. What do you want? I want you guys, I want to be home in my own bed, and I want you guys to take care of me. So to me, all questions answered right there. However, we make that happen. That's what we do. And it was difficult because when you are going to lose someone, you can't prepare for that. No matter who you are, what your experiences are, you just can't prepare for that. So it was a challenge. And I actually had to step out of my
Nursing
medical
doctor role.
yeah, and start grieving, because I was more like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to handle this. And I made the
You were in
schedule.
crisis management mode.
Right.
You're going to be here from 7 to 8, and you're here. When do you work? Okay, you're here from 9. So you get into this cycle, but what you don't, the human element is taken out, though.
Right.
So I had to step back. And then, of course, being a military person, you know, I'm all about timing and making sure if you tell me this, and this, don't let me have to call you.
Right.
And so my siblings, I have an older brother who spent 30 years in the Navy, as a matter of fact. And so we are sort of the, you know, the schedulers or so. But nonetheless, that human element for somebody who's going through, for a geriatric patient or, you know, someone who's elderly, is so important. You still have to incorporate the love portion. Whether that's reading scripture to them if that's what they want, whether that's singing when you can't sing, whether that, because I've done that, whether that's holding their hand, right? I mean,
Right.
whatever it is that brings them peace and joy. It's just interesting at times for some of the families when the individuals have, you know, mental deterioration to the point, say they have Alzheimer's or any of the dementias, and just for a second or even a moment, there is some clarity and they may recognize them. I mean, just the joy that can bring to a family. Man, I tell you,
You
it
call
just
them by the right name?
That part.
it will just, you know, there are some times though when you know you're just like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this one more day. But it's those small moments where you get to see that clarity, where they recognize someone or they start singing a song that you know that they probably don't know the words to, but something clicks.
It's coming back to them. Yeah. I was going to ask you, how do you continue? Because you said you're able to deal with patients from birth all the way until death, essentially, but you tend to gravitate towards the geriatric area. And, you know, that is a definite loss in a sense that you know that your patients are, you know, you're only going to have them for a period of time. And so how do you handle that and deal with that? Specifically,
you only get one chance to do it right. And so that's how I try to handle that every single time. If this is my loved one, if this is my family member, this is the one time I get to do it right. That means if they want to be comfortable, if we want them comfortable, whatever they want. You know, there have been times, you know, when patients are on hospice or on palliative care or end-of-life care, and they've asked for a glass of wine. Somebody better go get it. You know, this is the thing. if they don't want anything else, and I know you guys have seen, there've been a lot of articles written on somebody stopped in an ambulance and let them see the sunset for the last time. You know, those types of things. You just can't get back the joy that you bring to someone for doing that. I mean, it's just immeasurable. Even though I know it's the end, a lot of times the suffering is so bad sometimes that you have to say, you got to let go. And so we try to get it right the first time. We try to make sure that the questions are answered. What would they want for their end-of-life care? What would they want things to be like at the end? And hearing is the last thing to go. So always remember that. So when I have family members, they're sitting there arguing about, finances or whatever the deal may be. And I'm thinking, they're not gone yet. You know what I mean?
They can hear you.
I'm like, they're not gone.
They're already splitting up their belongings.
Yes.
My word.
Yeah. And so you can be that voice of reason sometimes. And,
That's a terrible thing to experience, I can imagine.
you
can't say anything, but you're there to kind of like hear them going at it.
Well, this is not the venue for that. This is to make this person comfortable. So if there's a discussion that needs to be had, they can hear everything you say. Maybe you want to have that conversation somewhere else.
Right now.
And, they love you till you have to come in and put your foot down. Because it's not about any of them at that moment. It's about that person. Do you want that to be the last thing they hear as they pass on?
Right.
I mean, can you imagine how that would make someone feel?
People don't think, because of course they may feel like they're unresponsive because they're not able to speak, but like you said, they can hear. It gets back. My grandmother would say, "Every shut eye ain't sleep."
right.
And every goodbye ain't gone.
There you go. Exactly. So it takes me back to that piece that she would say sometimes, and so that's very interesting. People need to hear that, because I think a lot of times people don't recognize those types of things occur, with the hearing being gone. Even thinking to a place before we get there, some of the things that happen late in life diagnoses like dementia and things of that nature, not being able to recognize certain things, you think, oh, that's just grandma. She never knew anybody's name, because, my grandmother would call everybody's name. Before you just knew who she was talking to. Right, exactly. Yeah. But you just knew who she was talking to. Peaches, I'm talking to you, So at one point, everybody became Peaches, But you don't recognize those types of things that are happening. How do you even work with people as they get to that place when you start to notice certain things? What can people look out for?
So early on in dementia, there's usually some very clear signs. Someone who's usually very well organized, forgetting bills, skipping medications. We see like polypharmacy. They may have all their medications, but they just haphazardly are taking them. They get lost in a place that they have been their whole life. You go downtown and you're like, oh, I got lost in Portsmouth. Where'd you grow up? In Portsmouth. So should you be lost in Portsmouth? No, I don't think so. Managing money. And then too, sometimes they recognize these things in themselves, and so they kind of play it off. Okay, they have ways of sort of making you feel like they know what you're talking about. And even patients who are in their moderate stages of dementia, you might say, I have a young man, well, I call him a young man, but he's in his 70s, and he reads everything. So I didn't realize I had one of my lanyards on. So he came up, he was like, oh, hey, Delta. And I'm thinking, okay, he's reading the shirts of the people coming in. He's reading the signs. He did not comprehend not one thing. So it's a big difference between comprehension and understanding. And so some of the early signs, getting lost, not being able to learn a new thing, money issues, people who are normally well put together, they come in, they're mismatched. And Now, I know
She would never.
her hair is not tight today. Something
Right.
is going on.
Right.
You just know. Or they may be inappropriately dressed for the weather. You know, it's 2 degrees outside. And they got on Speedos or something. You know, that's just an exaggeration.
Right.
But there's simple things. The issue, though, with dementia, though, is that we all make excuses sometimes for some of the things. I know I've lost my keys. I don't know how many times. My husband loses his keys at least once a week. And we say, oh, well, you know, always losing his keys. But when your keys are in the freezer,
Wait a minute.
that's a sign.
Yes.
You see the difference? Yeah, I might forget that I put it in this purse, this pocket, But if it's in the freezer
It does not belong there.
or in the microwave,
Right.
It
you
definitely
see
doesn't
how
belong there.
there is some disconnect in your thought process. You know, I thought about that because one of my patients, she was telling me she couldn't bring her. We kept calling why he was missing his appointments. She said, "Well, I haven't been able to find the car keys for about 3 weeks." They've been all over the house and everything. Finally, they were thawing the fridge, and that's when they found the car keys.
Oh, wow. Well, you know, it takes me back to a point in time. I went to visit my grandmother before she passed, you know, some years ago. And I remember going into the kitchen to get something to drink. And I looked at the kitchen, and my grandmother's kitchen was always clean. Because she opened up that kitchen at 8 o'clock in the morning for breakfast. Well, she started like 6, but breakfast started about 7 or 8. And once she shut that kitchen down, that kitchen was clean until lunch. She'd open the kitchen back up for lunch, and the kitchen was shut down. Same thing would happen for dinner. And I remember going to, you know, visit, and I was there for a little bit. I went to get something to drink, and I saw crumbs on the counter. And I stood there for a minute, and I just looked.
Baffled, right?
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is not Louise's kitchen, you know. But
Who's been in here?
exactly. And for the first time, I think that was the moment that I saw my grandmother for the age that she was. You know what I mean? I think that was the first time I saw her for her age at that point. And I remember it brought tears to my eyes. You know, because of course I immediately started thinking she's getting older. You know, and I started thinking then, what are we going to do at
we
this
lose
point?
Grandma, yeah.
Exactly. You know, and that was just something small, but of course we saw things continue to progress,
Right.
just in terms of, you know, cleaning and like I said, her taking her medications and stuff like that or whatever. She would just crunch her. She grabbed a little pill crusher and she just crunch her medicines up and everything or whatever, and just sprinkle them into Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and all. You know, and I would just look at her like, Louise, what are you doing, baby?
Not even equally.
No.
Just a little hair. sprinkle,
But
a
let me
little
tell you now, her thinking was, by the time I get to Friday, I got it all.
But
that's what she would do.
That's why we see in the ER, we would see patients come in, and we're like, we knew that they had some sort of dementia. When was the last? They have all the pills. You can go back and look at, you know, when they've refilled some things. Are you taking your heart medication? What color is that one? Okay. Now, what if you have 2 of the same color? How you know which one is which? So what we would see is a lot of times they would come into the ER with delirium, which really is just a metabolic disease. Electrolytes and stuff get off. It can mirror dementia. So they look exactly alike, just like a urinary tract infection in the elderly can mirror dementia because it changes everything in the way things are in their body, and that's how they respond. So mentally, they may have altered mental status. They may not know where they are. They may be confused. But delirium is usually reversible. Dementia is not reversible.
Right.
It's progressive. And when I gave the example earlier about hypertension and a stroke, it's similar. When we see someone, it's important for people to get screened for dementia early, 40s and 50s, because I do have some 50-year-olds who we categorized as geriatric patients because the disease that they have, dementia, is a disease of geriatric patients. They may not have the age, but they have the disease. And so our treatment of them would be the same as a geriatric patient. But it's really, really important that once you start noticing those individual things with screenings, because there's a series of questions, adding money. Being able to go, just like how I taught my daughter, and then I take them to the dollar store. Okay, you're gonna buy this, and that. If they can't do simple math like that, that tells you something. Their ability to calculate things is off. We would give them 5 words, have a conversation, and ask them to repeat those 5 words I gave them at the beginning. Simple tests that we do. Now, more specific cognitive screening needs to be done by a clinician with experience. And that's why conversational wise, I can sit and talk to them and do a screening and they would never know I screened them.
Right.
But there's certain things I would ask, and it's not so much how they answered, it's what they answer and in what sequence. It tells me where they are. And so, But if you recognize that early and we can start putting medications on to help slow the progression. Doesn't stop the disease because it will progress.
Right.
But it can slow the progression so that they can have more of a quality of life that they've experienced. What we often see, though, is that, there's nothing done until they become either aggressive or combative, and their dementia really has reached a stage where it's advanced, and they require hospitalization and secured units because many will wander. They'll get up in the middle of the night and go do things, and
Can't remember how to get back.
And it's a safety issue.
And I think sometimes, especially in African American culture, it gets this one of those things we talk about mental health issues and stuff like that or whatever. We truly try to, we don't recognize those things, or we don't want to acknowledge that those certain things exist. It's like, oh, mama's a little forgetful. Grandma.
Mimo has some issues now.
Exactly. Little things. Because I even think, I start looking at patterns in my family, and I may need to get checked out for some stuff now. I think about it, but when you think about certain behavior, you think about little patterns and stuff like that or whatever. I think I've seen situations whereby people kind of overlook things, and it's like, well, that's just Big Mama, or Pop is just, that's just how he is. And it's like, no, this is a challenge. This is an issue. We have to, really look at making some changes to really, at this point, get some assistance, because this could be something that we need to address, and it can make the determination where we're looking at quality of life, like you were saying, and even longevity at this point. So if we're able to provide some type of medical treatment to slow the progression down, that could be the difference between someone living from age 60 to 80 at that point, with a good quality of life at that point.
In our culture, everybody has a touch of dementia. That's what we used to hear. There were uncles and family members that I remember growing up down south that we used to sort of pass around. He stayed with this aunt for 2 weeks, and then he'd go to that, but really had dementia.
Right.
And that was probably the worst thing that we could do for them, because the one thing that they need is consistency. But what we would do is, they'd say, don't let them drink nothing, because, they might act a little crazy kind of thing. Or, we would try and do what we thought was best for them, but we were really causing more harm because we didn't address what the issue really was. And talking about mental illness in the African American community is really difficult because we just don't talk about it. It wasn't, it's just not something that's talked about.
It was taboo then.
Yeah, it still is.
But we can't ignore it any longer. It is blaringly obvious that, that we have these situations happening, not to other people, to our people.
And depression as well. I mean,
anxiety is a lot.
Unfortunately, dementia in and of itself is debilitating enough. more often than not, you always see other things. So just imagine if you're 70 or 80 and all of the people who you used to hang out with and go to funerals, because that's kind of a
That's
old
their
people
club.
thing,
Right.
That's
You go to the weddings, then you go to the funerals.
and all of the people who you used to associate with have all passed away. You last of the Mohicans, as they say.
Right.
How depressing could that be? And it really lets you know that your time is probably coming up a little bit sooner too.
Right.
So just imagine how depressing that could be, how that can play on that individual. Because I have several say, I don't have any friends. All my friends are dead. And they say it in a sense, it's a reality, but it's such a stark reality that it's numbing. It's mind numbing, because that's a painful thing.
Right.
You have lived, and they don't
Do they have
see the
survivor's guilt? Like
Some.
I'm the one that's left?
or the quality. They don't feel they maybe should have quality of life because everybody else, and some of them, they just aren't quite sure. But can you imagine if everyone else is gone but you? And your funeral partner or whoever you used to go to
Play
the
bingo
buffet,
or-
the buffets with and that was your social life, really.
Or your walking partner.
And all of that's gone. One of the things I try to teach when I talk about when I'm teaching others, nurses and providers and staff, to sort of get an understanding of how a person with dementia feels, I have them take a sheet of paper and write out every emotion and people in their lives. It may be, 30 or so. And then we tear it up and cut it up and put it in a bowl. And then we shake it up. And I said, take out 2. So you may get anger and Bob. For a person with dementia, that may be all they get. So that is what they're working with. So can you imagine how difficult that would be? All these other emotions and people in their lives who, they may have meant something to them or may mean something to them, and all these other emotions that they can experience, the only 2 that they have are these 2. That is just disheartening. But that's what they go through. So some people say, oh my gosh, my dad was the sweetest guy, the nicest guy, and now he's really aggressive. Well, he got
Angry
those.
all the time.
These are the 2 that he got out of that box. That's it.
Right.
Anger, and so on. So, and sometimes, treating those behaviors can be extremely difficult, and it's really not. We're not equipped for that in homes to be able to do that. The main thing I see in the ER, I've seen in the ER, there's 3 things that usually brings them to the emergency room, or the family members will bring them in. Incontinence is one, which means they're
When they're pooping on themselves?
inability to pee and poop. They have wandered out, and aggression. That means they hit someone. Somebody,
They
themselves.
fight, any of those things.
Yeah, because they don't remember. You got 2 emotions. That's all you have.
Right.
And you're trying to communicate, and how frustrating that would be that people are not able to get what you're trying to communicate.
And heaven forbid they have a hearing issue, they have sight issues, they have other issues like some of our veterans, if they have PTSD,
Right.
anxiety, depression, and throw bipolar or something else on top of it.
Right.
You have a challenging person.
And I'll tell you, that's what happened with COVID. The pandemic really did some things to our seniors, and I picked up several seniors as patients during COVID because of the mental health piece. And that's one of the things that we talk about in terms of really trying to identify what their new normal is going to be, getting out and identifying other activities. But guess what? You can't do anything now because, of course, if you go out, I could catch this thing and die. And so trying to help them to navigate this new technology and trying to reach certain people and talk to their friends and
Their
FaceTime
grandkids to keep them light.
the grandkids and stuff like that or whatever. And I was doing some telehealth, which is, is interesting in and of itself. But I picked up one client doing telehealth, and I ended up connecting with like 6 of her friends because one of the things they couldn't do their usual good girlfriends activities because they were not able to be around one another. And so I began to talk to one in therapy because she called. She said, listen, I need some help. And then she said, I've talked to a couple of others. They need you too, you know. And so that's what we began to do, is to talk. And I was talking with them individually, and then it hit me.
Group therapy.
Exactly. You know. And so I created a group Zoom. Now, I'll tell you, that's the funniest thing. Six ladies in their 80s trying to Zoom was absolutely hilarious. But I'll tell you, it was one of the most enjoyable therapeutic sessions that I've ever had as a therapist. Watching their faces light up when they could actually see one another. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, Alma, turn your hearing aid. Alma, hey.
That's our Zoom meetings. And you just say, okay, well, wait till she gets quiet, and then we'll tell her everybody can hear you.
Yes, exactly.
Turn the TV down, please.
Yes, yeah, and fix your video, because I tell you, one of the little ladies, I couldn't see anything, her chin, you know what I'm saying? That's all we kept trying to tell her, you know, aim the camera, turn the camera, and she'd look all around and stuff. It was the absolute funniest, you know, but watching them actually move and manage themselves through the pandemic. And the plus is, none of them passed away. None of them caught COVID.
That's
none of them passed away and all or whatever.
None of them caught COVID?
No, none of them caught COVID. And I'll tell you, 2 months ago, they were all together for the first time. A couple of them had gotten together here or there, but 2 months ago, that was the first time that they all got together.
Wow.
And so they FaceTimed me, you know, and one of them said, you know, Doc, are you free? I need to FaceTime you. So I said, okay, give me a minute, you know. And so I got out of, as a matter of fact, we had a meeting on campus, and I got out of the meeting and all or whatever. And so I got in the car, and they were all together, and they FaceTimed me. And it was, to see them together, was absolutely, I mean, it really was, you know.
It was homecoming.
Oh, my goodness. It was really nice to see them all together, back together again, able to do their thing and get out and stuff like that or whatever and all. And, of course, they had their masks on and everything because they still saying, we're still being cautious, but we're together, you know. But they hadn't been together in almost 2 years as one solid unit like they normally would, you know. And these were the things that they were so used to at that point and all. And so being able to bring them through that truly was a blessing. And so looking at the things that people deal with later on in life, you know, we have to think through these things, and I think those are the conversations that need to be had by younger family members, you know, so that we can really identify these things and say, hey, listen, this is something that we need to start looking at, not just bring Big Mama to the house to babysit the kids, but what quality of life are we giving Big Mama and Pop so that they can enjoy themselves, you know, to travel and get away and do things to help keep their mind refreshed and renewed each
And if they must stay, you know, the question is, how can they stay at your house? Are you prepared for that? Do you have a room downstairs for these individuals, you know?
Yeah, that's you know, caregiving is a really difficult job, and we often see when our, you know, residents or patients go home and the family members are calling the next day and go, I can't do this because it looks easy. It's not. You know, you know, even when you're talking about moving, lifting, you know, sleep cycles may be different. You know, there's
You're aging too, so you're trying to lift somebody and you could barely lift yourself some days. And
even just the safety things of a home. You know, my house is not, you know, senior proof. I mean, it's not even toddler proof, to tell you the truth. Right. Yeah, I have 2 grandchildren, but you know, and the things we worry about with our elders is falls, because they break hips and come into the ER. You know, the nice throw rugs that they all love, because you know every house has at least 5 or 6 of them.
Right.
So, and that on the nice shiny floor that they're gonna slip and fall by the sink. There's at least one by the sink, because that's where most of them are. But it's a trip hazard. It's a fall hazard.
Yeah.
You know, and so safety issues around the home that you don't think about, getting in and out of the tub. Now the shower thing is the new thing, but a lot of times, probably about 60 to 70% of the falls are either getting out of bed or getting out of a shower or tub. The towel on the floor does not work. Having assistance, and then gripper bars and those types of things, you have to actually plan for that. Some homes are built for niceties. It looks nice,
right?
But it's not really functional for people who after a while. Even stairs. My husband and I were talking about that the other day. We have a 2-story house, and I said, "Well, what's going to happen when we can't get upstairs?" He said, "I guess we won't wash no clothes. We just got to buy them, And so, but we started talking about converting one of our rooms downstairs and getting it, to a bedroom.
Right.
Because, going up 2 flights of stairs, it's all great when you're 40, 50, and 60 maybe.
And it's not great for some people in that age range.
Right. But after a while, you start thinking, and then the stair lifts, they're okay.
However,
they're expensive, but getting in and out of a shower and, all those types of things. Decisions, though, going back to decisions and having those conversations, I think it's really important for power of attorneys. I want to just briefly talk about power of attorneys because we see a lot of interesting stuff with power of attorneys. So I think the big thing with power of attorneys is that people need to realize once that person dies, right, that power of attorney is null and void.
Right.
A lot of people think that having the power of attorney means that, they can do anything and everything that person would do, while they are alive.
Exactly.
So you need to be mindful of who you make your power of attorney. And there's 2 different kinds. You can have a medical power of attorney to make medical decisions and or the durable to make decisions about financial things and those. Be careful because we see issues with that all the time. Some of our elderly individuals are homeless because of
someone has spent their money.
Yeah. And then they bring them to the ER or whatever, and they end up being social admissions, and we're trying to find a place that's going to take care of them when whatever they were earning or whatever stipend or whatever they were getting was supposed to do that, and that wasn't managed appropriately. Or there's infighting with family members about who's going to do what. Power of attorneys are extremely important, and then also wills, living wills, and having those things in place. And then the one of the biggest things for us is, for me as a geriatric specialist, is life-sustaining treatment options. Explaining to them what do not resuscitate means. Some people, when we say, okay, well, do you want your family member to be a DNR or do not? They automatically go into protection mode. No, I want them this, and that. Okay, this is what you need to understand. If their heart stops, this is what we're going to do. These actions are the actions we're going to take. We're going to do chest compressions, which is probably going to break some ribs. It will probably cause trauma. And then if they stop breathing, we will have to do that artificially. So that means we would have to insert something to be able to do that, connected to a machine to take over that. Is that what they would want? Not you. Is that what you want for them? And so you have to be really blatant with what you say. Because when you say DNR, I've had patients that were, the family members are like, well, yeah, so-and-so's a DNR. I'm like, do you understand what that is? No, I don't understand. We're going to make them comfortable. Just because they are a DNR does not mean you don't make them comfortable and let them transition naturally. You give medications where you can. You keep them in an environment that's quiet. You have their family members visit. One of the big things that we typically do is we don't like anyone to die alone because we feel that's important. It's like I said, we only get one time to do it right. That's why we do what we do, and that's why I love geriatrics, because I think it's our only opportunity to do things right the first time. But we have those conversations because the family members, a lot of times, once the patient has dementia, their ability to tell you what they want is there. It's not there, and sometimes there's financial gain for families to keep them alive, and so we have to struggle with that sometimes. Those ethical dilemmas come in, and we have a team of ethical individuals, and we sit down and we look at everything. We present everything to the family. The infighting you can do outside, but in here, this is what we're doing. We're talking about this particular person, and this is... because sometimes we've found they've had things in place that they've changed things, or they've written things and it was 10 years ago. And now you want to change what they have already put in when their mind was right and they were in their right state of, frame of mind. They said, this is what I want. I want this, I want this, I want this, I don't want this. But because it may be beneficial or maybe what you want, you're going to change that. But is that what that person wants? When they had the right mind, this is what they said they want. And so that is our only weapon when, we're trying to advocate for our patients.
And that's a tough pill to swallow. I will say, having been there,
that job is not for everybody.
Exactly.
It's not for the faint of heart.
It is a tough pill to swallow. And just being transparent, when my mother she had cancer, and she had decided that, sure, because they came in and they were selling hospice like it was a vacation home. And I told them, I said, get out.
You cannot have my mama.
Exactly. I put everybody out, and I had that conversation with my mom. Is this what you want? And I'm not ready. I need time for me to get my mind right, and that was just a real conversation. And my sisters, they told the doctors, because the doctors were trying to figure out, well, what's about to happen? They were like, okay, he's about to have his way. That's mom's favorite right there. She's about to do anything he asked her to do, because I wanted her to at least try some treatment options or whatever. Exactly. We're going to fight for this thing, And so, of course, she came back and told the doctors, yeah, I'm going to do this or whatever. But I got to a point that I understood, if you're tired, because I didn't want her to be in any pain, any suffering or anything like that or whatever. When you're ready, I'm okay. I'm going to be all right. That's the thing. But we look back and we laugh about it now, because, of course, like I said, I put everybody out. Leave. Get out this room.
Immediately.
Right now. There's the door.
I've been put out.
Yeah, because like I said, they came in and they were selling hospice like it was a timeshare. I was like, this is not a vacation.
It's a permanent vacation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is it. So, and so these are the tough conversations that families need to have, as we sit back.
And not wait till
exactly.
it's too late.
And just to jump right into some takeaways, so I know we're drawing, close to the hour and all, but looking at one, the power of attorney, understanding that power of attorney does die with the patient. So you need to make sure you do have a will in place and a named executor, because that's a whole nother, set of issues and all. And so sometimes we don't place things in a will, or we don't even put a will in place, because of course that speaks to end of life, and we can't handle those thoughts sometimes. The thought of our own immortality
is too much for many people.
Exactly. So definitely look at putting in your power of attorney, medical power of attorney, that durable power of attorney. Looking at putting in your living will, putting that, your executor to that estate and everything. Have those things in place, because one of the things we definitely don't want to do, we don't want to leave our family members in a place that they're having to make decisions for you or for us that could have been made when we were in our right mind.
And when you can hear them arguing about it.
That part, I'm sitting there thinking, I was like, well, yeah, well, I guess.
And you know what you want, and you can't communicate. So
exactly.
Even though this has been one of those conversations, it's a necessary one.
Yes.
And we have to do more of these types of conversations, so that if we stay ready, we don't have to get ready.
That's it. So I've enjoyed this conversation. It's taking me to a place, just reminiscing over some things that made me smile. Part of it want to make me cry sometimes, as well as we've been sitting here. But it's an emotional conversation that we truly just can't run from, and we have to take care of those things for ourselves as well as our loved ones. So, but I've enjoyed today's conversation.
I have as well, and we thank you so much, Dr. Guyton-Smith, for your time and your wisdom regarding these topics, and for your willingness to share what you know.
Thank you guys for the opportunity to present and be here with you today. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm Dr. Richard Mason.
I'm Dr. Tamara Williams.
And join us once again next week right here on WHOV 88.1 FM.
The essence of HU.
Keep your form.
Someday we'll be able to measure the power of words. I think they are things. I think they get on the walls. They get in your wallpaper. They get in your rugs, in your upholstery, in your clothes, and finally into you.
Thank you for joining us at the table.
Tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. for more delicious topical recipes for life on the Sunday Brunch.
On Smooth 88.1 WHOV.